Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the VO Playbook. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Kwesi Busia. Kwesi Busia is a dynamic British Ghanaian voice actor. He's a law graduate. He discovered his passion for performing arts at an early age. Raised in the UK, he immersed himself in after school theater programs and received extensive coaching in speech, drama, and singing, honing the skills that now define his versatile voiceover career. Despite graduating summa cum laude with a law degree, Kwesi quickly pivoted to voice acting after landing a contract in Ghana to record a series of audiobooks, a project that ignited his love for the craft. Since then, he has collaborated with hundreds of brands across 27 plus countries, delivering everything from commercials and documentaries to e learning courses, animation, gaming characters, and even guided meditations. With his talent for switching between a resonant British accent to a seamless American accent and toggling from energetic to soothing at the drop of a hat has made him a favorite among clients seeking a versatile vocal chameleon. When he's not in the studio, Quincy devotes time to exploring new recording techniques, staying current with industry trends, and sharing insights on the power of storytelling through voice. A strong believer in continuous growth, Quincy encourages everyone to chase their passions no matter how unexpected the journey may seem. Awesome, awesome, Quincy. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the VO Playbook.
Thanks
And
so
thank
much.
you for
Thank you for
making
having
you for making the time, Kwesi. Yeah, we're supposed to be on yesterday, but you know what happened? Doom saw
me.
in Ghana, so we couldn't
Yeah,
make it.
no, I'm not wasn't surprised. It can be it can offset plans a lot. So I'm glad we've been able
Exactly,
to do it today.
exactly. Thank you for being understanding and making the time. Yes.
No worries.
So let's get it started. Let's go way back. Let's go way back
Sure.
into time. Tell me about yourself, where you grew up. Tell us about your journey from
Sure,
studying
sure.
law
So
to becoming a voiceover actor. Yeah.
sure thing. So I grew up in the United Kingdom. I was born and raised there. Some years ago now. And it was good. I really enjoyed my time there. I wasn't actually geared towards acting from an early age. What happened was I used to do after school programs because I was homeschooled. And some of
Okay.
them were drama and dancing and singing and things like that. But I never really saw it as like a career that I might do for myself. For the most part, it was a way to meet people, to get out of the house. Because being homeschooled, it's very easy to just be kind of stuck in one place. So my parents wanted me to go out and get some skills and get some social experience. So my time in England was a mixture of just regular school stuff while being homeschooled, and then every so often, once a week, I'd go and do some drama and singing and dance, and that developed into my early adulthood when I actually moved back to Ghana and went to university. Wasn't really sure what to study. I didn't have a particular passion or something that I was certain that I wanted to do. And eventually I settled on law because I felt like I had a knack for it. I felt like it was a useful skill. I liked the idea of helping people in, difficult situations and difficult circumstances, and to kind of make people's lives better in that way. And then, unfortunately, what happened was I graduated law successfully, but my father passed away just a year after I graduated, and I
Sorry for
wanted
that.
to do a thank you. I wanted to do a master's degree in law, but I needed to raise the money for that. So my aunt, who at the time was working with, well, she has her own production company called Speak the Word, and she was developing audiobooks for Bishop Dag Hewitt Mills. And she's heard my voice before, so she said I should come into the studio, see if it's something that I'm interested in. And she likes the sound of my voice. She thinks I'd be good for audiobooks and recording. So I went into the studio and I was completely hooked after the very first time I got behind the microphone. And I worked on that project. There was a good number of books, and I just kind of got my feet wet with that. And then when that project was over, I went online and saw that people were doing this voice acting thing full time, that they do it for real money, for all sorts of companies and places around the world. And yeah, I bought my first microphone, and the rest is history.
Wow, wow, amazing story there, amazing story. So when did you realize that voice acting was your calling, your true calling?
Sure.
At what point?
So there's a couple of different points I can think of, and my answer might not be what people would traditionally guess, because I think voice acting is what we think about most of the time when we think about voice acting is being behind the microphone, doing performances and doing lots of different characters. And that's
Yeah,
amazing. I love that so much, and I really, really enjoy it. But if I think about what really sold me on doing this full time, I think it must have been just a regular weekday, like a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. And I realized that I could actually go anywhere on this day. I'm not stuck in an office. I'm not stuck having
exactly. Yeah,
deliverables that I
that's the
need
beauty
to.
of it, man.
Right. And what really, I really love about the industry, for me especially, is the freedom that it gives me. So I think the moment
Yeah,
that I realized that this is something truly for me wasn't even behind the microphone, ironically. It was just realizing that the day is my oyster. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, of course, provided your client work is done. And then you're
yeah,
free to
yeah,
just and then you're free to travel, go to a cafe somewhere, or go to a restaurant, or watch TV, or whatever it is that you want to do. You have the freedom and the luxury to do that because of how you can customize your time as a voice actor. So that's when I realized that, yeah, I love this, and this is something
yeah.
that I want to pursue and make a success.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Yeah, so you grew up in the UK. How did
Right.
this influence your style and approach to voice acting?
Sure. So I think it's interesting because it's benefited my style in certain ways, and I would argue that it can kind of be a disadvantage in other ways. And the reason I say that is because, particularly where I grew up in the UK, I don't think any English person would hear this and disagree with me when I say that they can be quite stoic people, right? Their voices are
Hmm.
not necessarily the most expressive. They're not necessarily people who will jump for joy when something exciting happens. They're quite stoic. They're quite measured. They're quite calm in the way that they speak. So, me growing up in the UK has made my kind of default voice very corporate, is what they would call it in the industry. I think I speak very clearly. I can speak very
Definitely,
calmly,
definitely.
very
Yeah,
directly, right?
yeah,
For especially in the beginning of my career, that made expressive jobs and emotional jobs and high energy jobs quite challenging, because you'll have a client that says, okay, now speak in a natural voice. You sound very polished. You sound very clear. Can you speak in something that's a bit more casual, a bit more natural? And for me,
yeah,
this is my natural. Like, that's not me putting on a voice
yeah.
for the radio or
It's awesome.
for the
Yeah,
microphone.
awesome.
This is exactly
Awesome
how I
voice you
speak. This
have.
is, thank you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. And it is very clinical in some ways. It's very measured. It's very focused. So I think growing up in the UK has given me the ability to do voiceovers that are very corporate in a very natural, easy way. That's my default. But I mean, I'm better at it now. Obviously, the more practice you have doing different styles and getting out of your comfort zone, then you learn to adopt different styles. So I'd say that being raised in the UK has given me a very corporate default.
Okay. Amazing, amazing. So audiobooks. I hardly hear about audiobooks gigs in Ghana. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you've told us how you came across that opportunity. But you're the second person I'm hearing having an audiobook gig here in Ghana. The first person was Kafu Day. He did an,
Mm.
I think, autobiography of one of the footballers or so. I've forgotten the company he worked with, but I think it's different from your aunties. So how can I get one? How can a voiceover artist get a gig like this? Audiobooks, yeah,
So it's a really good question and a very fair question. I have two responses to that. We need to market ourselves as voice actors more, because what I've learned in my time as a voice actor is that there are actually a lot of Western companies and companies around the world that are interested in our voices, in our stories, in our storytelling style, but they don't have access to us. So I've noticed that not a month goes by where I don't get a lot of voice production companies or audiobook companies asking me to do like an authentic African accent. And I always say that I'd love to, but there are people who grew up on the continent that can give you a more authentic read than I can. I can do a good
exactly.
approximation, kind of like Black Panther, right? But if you
Yeah,
want an authentic Ghanaian or Nigerian or Kenyan read, there are voice actors out there. And I try and point the companies towards people who I think are better suited to the project. So that's the first thing, is that we do need to market ourselves, because what I find is that the people who are willing to produce these audiobooks have difficulty finding us. And of course, if they have
Yeah.
difficulty finding us, they will hire an American or an English person who can do a good enough African accent. When there are actually a lot of people who would be interested to do that, more close to home.
And
Secondly, is
then,
that
do you think Ghanaians are marketing themselves enough? Voiceover
not
artists,
anywhere
Ghanaians.
near close. And I'm
Exactly.
saying that from experience, not to beat down on anybody, but I've also learned in my time here how much you have to market yourself. One
Yeah.
post a couple of times on social media is not enough. Sending an email out to 10 clients a week is not enough. Volume,
Exactly.
this industry really works on volume. So, however many emails or posts you think you're doing, you're probably not doing enough. And you really need to be aggressive when it comes to marketing yourself as a voice actor and making this a business, because there's so much online. There's so much to get distracted by, and there's so many other voice talents and people online as well that you don't necessarily, know how many people you're competing with.
Yeah.
So whatever number it is that you think you're doing, double, triple, quadruple it, and really put yourself out there. You can never, share yourself too much in this industry.
So let's jump to your second point. I cut you there.
My second point was, and I'm sure we'll talk about this quite often because it is something that I think is a big issue when it comes to voice acting in Ghana and in Africa, but it's content creation. We don't have anywhere near the amount of content produced locally that is produced internationally. I mean, if you Google production companies or audiobook companies in the UK, you will get tens and twenties and thirties of thousands of results just on Google alone. For Ghana, for Africa, not so much. So I think in addition to marketing ourselves widely, I think if there's any writers or creative writers or creatives among us, and again, creating content these days is cheaper than it's ever been, fortunately.
Exactly.
We've got a lot
Yeah.
of software and assistance and even AI tools sometimes
Yeah.
can really help that process along. So I encourage anybody who's got like a creative streak in them, if you want to write a book and cast voice actors and create a production, do that so we can get more of our work out there, not just internationally but locally. And of course that brings more jobs for artists, for cinematographers, for voice actors.
Exactly. That's true. So, you've worked with brands across 27 plus countries. That's amazing. How did you do
Thank you.
this?
Thank you. So similar, it's really marketing wide. It's making sure that not only can I be found by the people who are looking for me, but I'm also making an effort to find the people that I want to work with. So I am on every voiceover platform that exists. It's a lot of repetition in the beginning because you're basically copying and pasting the same information in different
Yeah.
places, the same profile pictures, but you got to really be everywhere. If it's Fiverr or Upwork or voices.com or voices123, all of them. Be on YouTube, even put yourself on YouTube, put yourself on your social media pages, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere you can potentially find a client. I even got a client, a well-paying one actually, on Reddit of all places. There was
Really?
some,
Wow.
yeah, I was surprised too. I didn't know that and it was the same day I posted it. I was very surprised. So there's all sorts of places, whether it's Reddit or some other forum or somewhere. You never know where somebody is looking or listening for a voiceover talent. So really push yourself and put your work out there. Somebody somewhere will hear your voice
Exactly.
possibly and want to cast you for something all over the world.
Yeah. So when I started, I placed myself on all the pay-to-play platforms, all of them, and I contacted almost every agency I could get my hands on. And fortunately for me, I got a few of them. I've gotten some few gigs from Voice 123. Yeah, and it's been amazing. Yeah. But how do you prepare for such a wide variety of projects?
That is a really good question. I talk about this a little bit in my voiceover essentials course. What I
Exactly.
like to do is I like to break down
I
the
heard it.
elements of
Yeah,
a
and
voice.
and for those of you out there, he has a very amazing course. I bought the course, and it's awesome. Or
Yeah. So thank you, by the way.
yeah,
I like to break down the elements of a voice and a voiceover into a couple of different categories. So let's take volume, for example. It's a very simple one: how loud or how quietly you're speaking. And then
yeah,
pace. You can speak very slowly or you can speak very quickly or somewhere in the middle. And then your pitch. I have a naturally deeper voice. Some people have a naturally higher voice, and some people are very good at oscillating between the two. So let's take volume, pace, and pitch. If you're doing a serious character, let's say, you would probably go for a lower volume or a medium volume, let's say, a lower pitch and a lower pace. So you speak quite slowly and quite deliberately like this because you're trying to be imposing, you're trying to be menacing. For a high energy commercial, you'd probably speak a bit quicker like this and try and get everybody really energized for the energy drink that you're selling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when
Exciting.
you
Yeah.
keep these elements of the voice in mind, it's easy to, when the client says, okay, so now we're doing something that is emotional and medical, then you'll go a bit slower and a bit softer and a bit more
Wow.
serious to really connect with your audience. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I remember the foundations. I remember kind of my default, and then I switch certain elements of my voice around depending on what the gig requires. And sometimes the client will, hi, did I lose you?
Yes, for a while. For a while. Yeah.
All right. I don't know what the last thing you heard me say was, but basically, there's different elements of the voice that if you can be aware of them and manipulate them, depending on what the client needs, it's very easy to pivot from one style to another quite easily and quite intentionally.
Okay. Thank you very much, please. So, which type of projects excites you the most? Is it commercial, audiobooks, animation, narration? Which type?
So, great question. In terms of kind of prestige, I guess you could say, I like commercials because sometimes you're working with brands that people who are not voice actors or your friends know. So sometimes if let's say you've done a Burger King commercial and a friend hears you on Burger King, that's very exciting because it means you get to stay in the lives of your friends, even when you're not with them or you're not in the same country or anything. So for that reason, I like commercials. In terms of actual vocal performance, I really like video games because I'm a huge gamer. And video games and animations because you get to play off other actors in a way that you don't with commercials or audiobooks or narrations or things like that. Those are very usually you're alone in the booth, doing what you're doing. Probably there's a client telling you how they want it. But with animations and video games and things like that, you get to play essentially. You get to be more expressive, you get to be more dynamic, and you get to work with the energy in the room and the energy that the other talents are giving you. So those are my favorite to work on from a performance point of view.
Video games. Never had one before. Yeah, sounds interesting.
They're a lot of fun to work on. You have to sometimes record the same thing in different styles. So depending on what the player is doing with your character or how they're interacting with who you're playing as, they might be best friends or they might be enemies. And you have to play and use your voice to communicate that different tone, to represent what the player might be doing. So that's a lot of fun because you get to play like multiple roles in the same one character.
And how did you get that gig? Was it through a pay to play or
That was Fiverr actually. So the video game roles
Fiverr?
I've gotten,
Wow.
Fiverr is good for video game roles. There's a couple of other ones that are geared more towards animation and characters. The thing I find with animations and characters and things like that is because they need everybody on the same kind of microphone quality, they're a little harder to find online. Those are the ones that they often cast like in country, whether it's, the UK or the US or wherever they're producing. So not that you can't get very exciting character roles online. I've noticed in my experience, at least, that they are more willing to cast in person. So yeah, that's definitely something that I look forward to doing more of as my time in the industry matures.
So, what project really challenged you, and how did you handle it?
So that's a great question. There has been a couple of projects that I found quite challenging. One of the reasons was, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you can have a very different idea of what a certain word means. So if a client says they want you to sound cool or intelligent or emotional, me or whoever the voice actor is growing up with all their experiences and their social interactions may have a very different understanding of what the word cool or intelligent or emotional means versus the client who may have been raised on the complete opposite end of the world. So I've kind of developed a few techniques that I use to get through when there's like a miscommunication or a misunderstanding of the emotion that the client or the sound that the client wants me to use. One of them is that you ask the client which piece on your demo did they hear that they want you to kind of emulate for the project. And that's very helpful. So if they heard like a certain sound on, like, let's say it's the second part of your demo, then you know that, okay, they want you to sound something like this within that ballpark. So I know to emulate those emotions, those tones, that pace, that volume. Another one is to, if you can send me like a link of kind of how you want the recording to sound, not so you copy another voice actor, but just so you kind of have a general idea of what kind of tone and what kind of sound it is that they're looking for. I did have a client fairly recently. It was a live session where my techniques, none of them worked. And they said that they heard my voice, they liked my voice, they thought it sounded unique, but they didn't really have a particular piece on the demo that they liked. So I couldn't use that as like an avenue to kind of understand what it is that where they were coming from. And then they also didn't have any material that they wanted me to use. So it was a really tricky live session. Usually I'm done with a live session, under or at an hour. This one was 2.5 hours of just trying to get what it is that they wanted. It was a lot of trial and error. And as I mentioned earlier, if you know the kind of elements of a voice, you can kind of go through them in order. So they don't like it when it's too high pitched. They don't like it when it's too low pitched. They like it when it's medium pitch. Volume, they don't want it too low. They want it medium volume. And then you just kind of try going through all of those until the client finds something that they're happy with. So that's what I would do in a situation where I don't know exactly what the client's looking for.
Very amazing. So how do you describe the current state of the voiceover industry in Ghana, Kwesi?
So I'd use the term underdeveloped to describe the voiceover industry in Ghana. I say that because I don't think there is a lack of talent or even interest in the industry. I think that creative projects and making money from creativity is a relatively new kind of idea all over the world. But in Africa particularly, we're not really geared towards creative things when we're young. It's like doctors, lawyers, engineers, that kind of thing. So I think there is a huge underestimation of how much money and how much prestige that we could make from creative projects and voice acting specifically. I cannot tell you how much my heart breaks when I see like either a YouTube advert or an Instagram advert from a Ghanaian company, and it's just text with no voiceover. And every time my heart breaks because you would do so much better. Your brand would go so much further if there was a nice voice attached to this. So I think that for lots of different reasons, we don't see how valuable and prestigious and useful voiceovers are. So I think it's underdeveloped, and there is an interest in a market for us, not just locally, but in other parts of the world as well. If you see how successful Squid Game or other Korean dramas have been worldwide, I do believe, in Bollywood even, I do believe that there is definitely a space for African arts and performing arts projects out there.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think it's time for Ghana to have its own voiceover association? Yeah, that is really
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that would help with so many things because a lot of people want to get into the industry, but they don't know where to find jobs. They don't know how lucrative it'll be. And not that it's hugely expensive to start, but it is expensive if you're not going to make anything from it. So just getting the microphone and getting the equipment and all that stuff, only to make 0 CDs from it. I understand why it's something that people are not keen to do. So having an association which helps voice actors find jobs or regulates the pricing structure in the voiceover industry globally is a mess. But in Ghana particularly, it's really bad because we are getting severely underpaid for the same work that you can do, just next door or not far across the board. And you're getting paid hundreds and thousands of dollars to do like a short commercial read. Yeah. Where in Ghana, you kind of have to really fight and justify your price. So, yeah, I think an association for getting jobs and for getting high-paying jobs would be very helpful. And ensuring a standardization of the audio quality as well. I've noticed that some adverts and some radio stations and some commercials, the quality fluctuates. And if we can have like a baseline, that's a technical thing, but yeah.
So what can we learn from the international market to help grow the industry here in Ghana?
Oh, that's a good one. I think they take their voice acting industry very seriously. I think they pay their voice talent well. I think they really respect the craft and they recognize how much it does for their brands and their businesses. It's always the last thing that's done. They'll hire the script writers, they'll do the video, and then they'll hire the voice actor last. But
Yeah.
a project rarely goes out without a voiceover in the West. Like there's very few um, adverts, or relative, like proportionately few adverts and commercials and things like that that go out without a voiceover. So I think what we can learn from them is respect for the industry, and the industry pays everyone back. You get better brand loyalty because they're familiar with the brand and the tone of the brand. The people who are in these companies get better sales and better return on investment. And then the voice actors also get adequately compensated. So everybody wins when a voice actor is attached to a project, or a voiceover is attached to a project. So I think that's what I'd say.
Yeah. Speaking about being underpaid, I had a client here in Ghana who wanted to pay me just 100 Ghana cedis for
Wow.
for for a 2 minutes gig. I was like, wow,
Yeah,
wow, wow. Do you know how much I get paid? My agency pays me for a 30 seconds gig as
exactly.
compared to 100
Exactly.
cities.
And the thing is, if you don't do it, they'll find a cousin who will. So that's the difficulty with the industry, is that we really need to standardize how much it
Exactly.
is, and hold fast and say that no, we're not getting paid less than 1,000 CDs for a 1 minute voiceover, or
Exactly.
whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
even that is
So,
quite low. 1,000 CDs for a 1 minute voiceover is about $50. It's quite low, but
yeah.
still, it's a better starting point than 100. You know what I mean?
So, how can we make voice artists in Ghana more visible and valued?
We really need to start marketing ourselves more. We need to
Yeah, you spoke
make
on that.
noise. We need to, because when one voice actor does it, right, or male or female, it's like, oh, he is a voice actor, oh, she's a voice actress, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When you have a big group of people doing
Yeah.
something, then it's like, okay, Ghana has a thriving voice acting industry. It's not
Exactly.
just one individual or two individuals or a couple of people who
I
are
like
making
what our
money on the
Nigerian
side
brothers are doing.
here or there. We need to show that it's not a side hustle. Exactly. Exactly. They're
Yeah.
very aggressive with their industry. They really make it
Yeah.
feel like something that a lot of people are invested in, something that a lot of people are
Yeah.
benefiting from. And I think that is why they're able to, it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing, because they have so many people trying to show that they are voice actors. They have more voice actors who find more work, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can do something similar like that in Ghana.
It would take off.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you were part of this future association, what role would you love to play?
To do the marketing, the international marketing, because I think I have good experience working with clients abroad all over the world. And I think I would be a good kind of bridge between Africa and different countries, so they get to know what we do and what it is that we work with and the talent that we have. I think you do need somebody who can kind of communicate across lines, negotiate for your talents, hear, argue certain things. I think quite apart from just, the voiceover work that I do, I think because we have African voice talent that may or may not be less experienced with the business side of voiceover, I do think it would be good to have somebody who can kind of ease that in, because all over the world, when people think about voiceover, they think about the microphone. And that is literally just a small fraction of what it is that you have to do
Yeah.
to make this a successful full-time industry. As I'm sure you know, there
Yeah.
is a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We actually don't spend as much time behind the microphone as we do marketing or emailing
Yeah.
or negotiating or auditioning even.
So forming an association. What are the steps? How do we go about doing this?
Right. I think it would start with having a group of people, like a consensus. What do we need, right? What are our issues? What do we need? Who is best placed to do them? And let's really come together as an. I know it's borderline impossible to bring every voice actor in Ghana together. I get that, but that hasn't stopped other people in other parts of the world building things like Voices.com and Voices123 and all these other voiceover associations and platforms. So I think we really need to spearhead, or somebody needs to spearhead a kind of, okay, this is the central place, at least for now, where voice acting in Ghana needs to pass through. And this is not to steal money from people or cheat people or become like a gatekeeper to the industry. That is just to make sure that we have some kind of agreed upon standards that we can use as a launch pad for all our projects moving forward.
It sounds so simple. I think a lot of people have tried to do this, but it seems
Uh,
it's just not working.
the problem that I've encountered personally is that there is a lot of interest, but when you ask like Ghanaian voice actors, again, for the reasons that I mentioned, I'm not holding it against anybody, but when you say like, okay, I've got this project for you, can you record? They don't have a studio, or they don't have the equipment, or they've got some other kind of obligation, or they need to go and rent a studio. And unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, our industry moves quite quick. Like clients want their work ASAP because they've got their own deadlines. So in forming an association, it's difficult when the people you'll be forming that association for aren't also fully equipped themselves, because then you formed an association of aspiring voice actors, none of which have microphones at home. You know what I mean? So it's like that is a bit of a challenge. We need a place where more dedicated studios, I think, would help, because not everybody can necessarily build a home studio, when they first get into the industry. But if we had more notable, recognizable studios, then I think that if there was like a place that people could go to
So the
record these projects
studios
that was
too
well
will
known.
also have to come on board.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And, having one person finance all of that is a tall order. So it would be a collaboration between a lot of different people. Um, but I think getting the infrastructure in place is probably the first thing we need to do, because if you have talent that's eager, interested, and has good voices, but has no way to record and send these to their clients, you don't have anything. So I think studios is where I'd say is the first place. Not that there aren't studios in Ghana, but I
There.
think we need
Yeah.
more in more places. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to bring all of us, get all the voiceover artists together. I've formed a WhatsApp group. I've gotten a few people to come on board. I think I have 13 of us on that group page. Yeah, and I need
Nice.
more.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I need more. I need more people to join in. I'm expecting you to come on board too soon.
oh,
Yeah,
please send me a link. Send
yeah.
me a link.
To speak to them. Most of them are aspiring voiceover artists, so
Mm,
they will need some guardian. Maybe you can talk to them, mentorship and all that. But so let's get to this.
happily.
How important is mentorship and community in the growth of voiceover artists?
Wow. I think it's very important. Very important. Um, there is a lot of difficulty in this industry for so many different reasons, whether it's frustrating clients, or finding work in the industry, or bad news in an audition, or there's so many things that can go wrong. I'm not trying to scare anybody off. It's the same in every industry. Every industry will tell you the same thing. Like, but what's unique about voice acting is that nobody outside of the industry really gets it, right? If you're a businessman and you say you lost a big contract, people who are not business people will understand why that's devastating. But voice acting is a very kind of personal, kind of special, niche kind of field, where you really do need people who have been through that trauma to really get it. I mean, I have a great community of friends and supportive family and everything, but there's nothing quite like speaking to another voice actor who gets where it is that you're coming from, and the
Exactly.
frustrations and the difficulties. And so I think community is extremely important, and mentorship as well, because there is a lot there's no need for us to keep making the same early bird mistakes. Like, we all make them, we all go through them, but there's no need for us to each go through them. It'd be good if somebody who's gone through that experience can say like, okay, do this, not that, or try this, not that. um, Simple things like how you save your file names, and where you look for jobs, and how you negotiate prices. These are all things that we've trialed and errored, and undervalued ourselves and made mistakes and wish we could have done differently. There's no need for new people coming in to do that. The work has already been done for a lot of them. So I think mentorship is very important, just to make sure that other people don't run into those same pitfalls, because there's no need.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. So, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone just starting out in voiceover?
Hmm. So narrowing it down to one is tricky. But if I had to, it is tricky. If I had to, I think treat it like a business. I think if you want to do this, even if it's part time, and you want to make money from this, I think treat it like a business. Treat it like you would any other business venture. From registering a company to, you know, picking work hours, to any of those things that you do. If you're doing a hair salon, or if you're doing a barber shop, or if you're doing whatever business, a plumber, whatever it is, whatever business that you're starting, you don't just need to have a good voice. You need to be an entrepreneur to really do voice acting to its fullest. So I think, of course, practice your behind the microphone and all of these things, market widely, is all very obvious advice. What I'd say is, if you're going to do this, be prepared to treat it like a business, because it is a business. The only difference is that the service you're providing is recordings for clients. But other than that, it's the same as being a plumber. It's the same as being a business man or woman. It's the same as textiles, whatever it is. You're a business and you're a brand. So think in that direction. And when you're not sure what to do or where to get clients or how to, scale up your business, think about what you'd do if you were any of those other professions, and then you'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was looking for Ghanaian voiceover artists, it was quite difficult for me to find them. So I googled Ghanaian voiceover artist, and the first name that popped up was your name. I'm like, wow, how did you do that?
Again, I'm proud of that. And again, it's really aggressive marketing. So I have my own website. I'm on all the platforms. I've got my social media pages, and search engine optimization is something that you'll hear a lot about in this day and age, using keywords. So I think on pretty much all my platforms, I've got British Ghanaian voice actor, because I am a British Ghanaian voice actor. So I think, people see the Ghanaian and then it puts it through Google. Just be aggressive with your marketing is what I'd say. And you will find that the algorithm gods will bless you
Yeah,
the more you have your stuff out there.
yeah. So how do you keep improving your skills and staying relevant in this space?
Good question. Practice, practice, practice. I try and get out of my comfort zone. I don't only record when I have a client project. I try to record when I don't have clients, or when I don't have immediate clients. And one of the best things I can recommend to especially new voice actors is to listen to other voiceovers. Listen abroad, listen locally, listen just not to mimic, not to copy, not to try and steal somebody's style, but just to hear how voices sound, and how voices can be used, and how voices can be used to reflect certain emotions. Really immerse yourself in audio, in sound, in voices. Keep listening, I think, is the best thing that you can do. And voice acting is like a muscle. You don't necessarily know you're improving at it. One day you wake up and then you're pretty good, and then you quite like the demo that you've done, and then you keep on doing it that way. So listen wide, I'd say.
Yeah, amazing. So is there any tips for getting your first clients, especially in Ghana or
First client.
internationally? Let me tell you. So when I started, uh, I didn't have anyone to look up to. Okay, so I had to go online. I did some googling and all that, and Google told me to contact studios among the list of things.
Mhm.
So I was walking in my area. I saw the signboard of the studio. I took the number, called the owner, and then I told him I'm a voiceover artist, man. I'm looking for gigs and all that. So he told me to send a sample of my voice. So I recorded that on my phone and sent it to him. And he loved it. He's like, wow, your voice is good, man. Is that your raw voice? I said, yes, it's my raw voice, just from the phone. Yeah. So he told me to come to the studio the next day. There's a gig for me from
Fantastic.
Sierra Leone. That was my first gig. That was my first gig.
First
And
gig
then
is international. That's really cool.
the subsequent week, I got one for a YouTube channel, like two other gigs for a YouTube channel, and
Yeah,
that was amazing. That was how I got my first voiceover gigs. But
fantastic.
what tips do you have for
I
others?
think you said it all, really. Just seize opportunities that you find and get in touch with people and contact them. My best advice is similar to what you said. I'd start with free things that are inexpensive. So having your demos on your social media page, for example, you don't need to pay anything to set up an Instagram voiceover page. You don't need to pay anything to set up a TikTok. It's good for people to have a place where they can listen to your samples and listen to your demos. But it's very simple. I mean, sometimes it is just a phone call. If you can get people to hear your voice broadly in any kind of way that you can, whether it's calling studios or sharing your stuff online, do it. And somebody somewhere will hear your voice. And if you're good, they will give you an opportunity. And one opportunity becomes two, two become three, three become four, and then you're on a roll. So exactly what you did. Just reach out to people.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Chris. So, what's your dream brand or character to voice one day? What's that dream brand, Chrissy?
I would love to voice like an animated character for a big Disney or Pixar movie. That would be a
Yes.
dream come true. That, yeah, probably a villain because it's nice to stretch some evil muscles sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
I try not to be in my real life, so to do that acting is a
yeah.
nice way to kind of scratch that itch.
Yeah.
So definitely, I would love to do like a big budget, big audience movie character role. That would be a dream come true.
Which character do you love from any of those Disney?
Um, I really like superheroes. I'm very simple like that. I like superhero projects. I like Captain America is my personal favorite superhero. Batman is a close second. So I like roles where you can kind of really embody like virtues and values and things like that. It's not just, you get to kind of become this person and you're inhabiting a good and interesting space. Even if it's a bad character or a villain, if they have like a good motivation and a reason for what they're doing, that's always a really interesting role to play because you get to see things from this person's perspective and you get to put that into your performance and in a way try and kind of convince people and similar to what we do in law actually. It's you're selling a perspective, right? You're trying to get people on your side and express why you think that this judgment should end the way that it should. And voice acting to some extent is similar. You're trying to convince people why this performance is believable, why you should understand and believe what this character is saying. So yeah, those are the kinds of roles that I'd be interested in.
Yeah. I love this. Kung Fu Panda.
I love Kung
Yes,
Fu
I
Panda.
love the villain in part three, Kai. Did you watch
Yeah,
that one, Kai?
yeah.
Yeah, he went around stealing everybody's powers or whatever. That voice, deep voice.
Something like that would be amazing, right?
Yeah, the jungle may be dense, but they don't hide the boy forever.
That's the one. That's the one. You got it. You got it.
Yeah, yeah. And how about brand? What's your dream brand? Someone
Oh,
said Samsung.
Samsung, Apple, those kinds of ones,
Yeah,
those really big ones would be amazing. Google, I think, has a special place in my heart just because everybody uses Google. So being able to say like, "Hey, I'm the voice of Google," like that is, quite a flex. So
yeah.
if Google is around, if they're listening, I'm open, I'm available,
Hey,
I'm
Google,
interested.
Google. This is yeah, Google. Okay. So, what's something people usually misunderstand about voice acting?
Oh, that it's not just animations or cartoons or things like that. That
Yeah,
voice acting is a very broad category. Um, from audiobooks to commercials to e-learning projects like online courses and things like that, even to some extent like stage performances and abroad they have trains that announce like the deadlines and buses that are like this stop is all of that is voice acting. All of that is voice acting. It's not just cartoons and animations and video games and play. A lot of it is very serious. A lot of it is even medical devices or when you have those wireless earphones and they talk, all of that is voiceover. So I think people misunderstand just how much work is in the industry. And when people say like, it is a challenging industry because you do have to hustle, but there is the workout. I think the work exceeds the talent. If you work broad and wide, you can find a consistent way to live and make a living in this industry, even with all the competition that is there. You know.
so if you were given a script for an audition,
hmm
what was the first thing you do? What was your process like?
I'd check if the client has left any notes, any kind of tone or any kind of description on what it is that they want. If they have, I'll just try and follow that to the best of my ability. I usually like to do 3 takes if it's a short audition. So just to kind of cover my bases so they know what it is that I'm capable of. If the first take isn't quite to their liking, I've got more in the tank, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then if there's no description, I just kind of, this is what I think the script is trying to convey. And I have had quite a lot of auditions where there is not much to go on. And so you just kind of do the best that you can. You read the script and you see that it's for, I don't know, a new medical device for elderly people. And I just assume that elderly people won't want something that's too loud, too exciting, too fast paced. They're a little bit slower, a little bit more calm, a little bit more measured. So I'd go with something along that style. And yeah, just, sometimes it is a bit of guesswork if there's not much feedback and information given from the client's end. So just kind of feel what you would do naturally. You might be right sometimes, you might be wrong sometimes, but you can't dwell on it too long. I think, especially with auditions, you got to kind of keep them ticking. So
Yeah.
do the best you can, and then move on to the next one because you got to get through a lot. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm part of this platform that sends auditions that pay as much as $25,000,
Yeah.
$50,000, and I've been trying these auditions. I always get shortlisted, and then the next
Yeah,
step,
that's good.
I
That's more than
always get
most.
there's shortlisting, and then there is considering. I get
Mm.
shortlisted, and then the next one I get considered, but I've never gotten that yet. Almost, I think it's just a step away or so.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. No, that's amazing. Like, if you hear some of the horror stories that voice actors get, they do hundreds of auditions sometimes and never even get shortlisted or messaged or anything. So
yeah,
I know firsthand the frustration of getting so close to these really big gigs, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
I know,
yeah.
and sometimes I've been between it's me and one other person, and then they get an email
Yeah,
saying, "Sorry, we went with the other voice," and it's rough. It's really rough. It's the worst. It's and then you think, what could I have done differently? What could I have done better? But you
yeah,
also have to remember that sometimes it's not you. It's genuinely like you did a great audition. There was nothing wrong.
yeah,
Somebody somewhere just, maybe the other person sounded like somebody they knew once upon a time, or
yeah,
there could be 101 reasons why it wasn't you. This is I'm not, I'm learning this too. It's something that we all go through. Try not to beat yourself up about those. That's just
yeah,
something that I've learned as well, because next time it'll be you. And another thing I like to think is that every time you get a project, somebody else is getting that same email. You know what I mean? Like somebody
yeah,
else is getting that
yeah,
we went with another person.
yeah,
So it is a tough part of the industry, but it's unavoidable. And yeah,
yeah. I wish I got it though.
some of the I still think about some of my old ones as well.
Yeah,
So close. Was even one person? Yeah, I get you, man.
yeah. So finally, where can people find you and listen to your work, please?
Thank you. So, kwesibusia.com is where you can find like the biggest repository of my demos. All my demos and adverts and portfolio is on there. My Instagram page is where I post kind of new things that I'm working on. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn by the same name, Kwesi Busia. So that's where any updates, anything that's coming from
Okay.
my end, you'll find
What
out about it.
what you have on Facebook, is it different from the Kwesi Busia voiceover? I've seen Kwesi Busia
No,
voiceover.
no. Facebook back in the day required you to create like a separate page,
Okay.
but it's the same information I post across all my platforms usually. LinkedIn, I try and do like things about the industry more so than my performance, but by and large, if you're following one, you're getting the latest and greatest from what I'm up to.
Okay. Kwesi, thank you so much for being with us today. You've dropped
My
so
pleasure. My
many
pleasure.
gems from your personal story to your vision for the industry. We are truly grateful for your time, your honesty, and your passion. It's been such a
Thank you so
rich
much.
conversation,
Thank you for doing this.
and I know our listeners will walk away inspired.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate it.
Okay, that's it for today's episode of the VO Playbook. If you ever doubted the power of your voice, I hope this conversation with Kwesi Busia has changed that. Don't forget to follow, share, and leave us a review. Every voice matters, and this is just the beginning. Until next time, keep speaking, keep learning, keep showing up. I'm Prince Don Vessel, and this is the VO Playbook.